Brandon from DB Services, talking today about the new upgrades to the Trigger Claris Connect flow script step in the most recent version of FileMaker 20.2. Claris Connect is a great way to bridge our FileMaker applications and other third-party applications that exist that would be beneficial to our business and our user experience that may not be natively available through FileMaker Pro. A flow is a great way to come up with a series of actions that would take place upon a trigger and could even throw in logic that would determine which actions would take place next based on the feedback of earlier actions. It is very easy for us to trigger this flow through the new Trigger Claris Connect flow script step, and that is what we'll be covering today. We're going to start off first in the demo file by setting a few things up. We'll start with creating a Claris Connect account, and you'll need this in order for the new feature to function properly, so make sure you have a Claris Connect account set up first. We'll be also using an example today of creating a flow that will use user information in this demo app and add them to a MailChimp audience to be used in future marketing endeavors that your business may need. And again, this is just one example of one of the many third-party applications that we can connect to using Claris Connect. So you'll want to make sure for this example that you do have a MailChimp account ready to go, set up with at least one audience. Normally this is natively done when you create an account and it asks you for your organization or your business, so there shouldn't be many worries there. Finally, we'll want to make sure that we do enable the FM REST and FM app privileges in our application before proceeding on. These permissions is what lets our FileMaker app connect with Claris Connect and make the magic actually happen. Now, we have already done this step for you in the demo file. However, if you do need help with that, feel free to read more in our article and where it can describe further about how to set that up for your specific users. And we also do have our accounts ready to go, which means we're ready to proceed with the demo. Now, before we get too far into what is actually on the screen in our FileMaker demo app here, we're going to go over to Claris Connect, and we're going to make our new flow. So I have already created a new project called Brandon W. Trigger Flow Demo, as that is what we are doing here today. But you can feel free to add either a flow to an existing project like I'm about to, or create a new project for this. So we're going to create a new flow, and it immediately pops up that we need to figure out what is going to trigger this flow. And for this example, we're going to use an HTTP webhook. This is fairly robust, and we're able to use this in many scenarios, and this works very well with our FileMaker application. So we're going to scroll down to Utilities and select the HTTP option. And as it only has one option for what the action is going to be, which is our incoming HTTP request, we will select that and move on. We do need to choose a webhook, and at this point you have the opportunity to either select one that already exists. In my case, I already have the add user webhook created, or we can create a new one. So I am going to have this be called update user. And it has the create option as it has not already been created yet. So we'll select that. And before I can save the trigger, Claris Connect wants to make sure that the webhook that they have just created actually does work. So it requires us to either send an HTTP request to it through other means, but the easiest right now for us is just to click on it, have it pull up, and we can close out of it now, and it will say it has worked, and we can save our trigger. Now that we have saved our trigger, we should rename our flow so that we know what flow we're actually looking at if for some reason we back out or need to come back to this later. So I'm going to call this MailChimp Demo. And that is what our flow name is. Now you can name it whatever you please. And next we're going to go in and add our MailChimp action. We're going to subscribe to an audience, adding a new member. So I have recently used MailChimp. If you have not, then it might be down here in the apps section where you can search for it. However, since I've already used it, I'm going to select up here and go for the subscribe to audience option. This will add a new subscriber to our audience, which is exactly what we want in this case. I have already connected my MailChimp account. However, if you have not, there will be a connect new MailChimp account button that pops up that you'll have to go through and log in and allow access from Claris Connect to your MailChimp account. Once you have done with that, it'll ask you to move into the final window, which is configure. Now at this point in time, we don't have our data set up from our FileMaker into this new webhook yet, but we should probably have something that'd be able to test this out once we do. So let's just go ahead and make some example information in here. So I have DB services as my audience. Again, that'll mainly be your default audience when you created your MailChimp account, or you're more than happy to select one custom that you've already made for this. And I'm just going to add an email address of a subscriber that I'd like. I'm just going to do user@yourcompany.com as an example. Now do note that you should not put in your email address that you created your MailChimp account with, as MailChimp does not allow for this when you're subscribing to audience. You're creating a new member, and that member already exists in your audience since you created the account. Now that we're done with this, we can go down to the bottom. We can skip the rest of these steps for the time being and go to save. And at this point, we have our flow ready to go. We just need to enable it so we can use it through our FileMaker application, which we do, and move on. Again, we're going to refresh. We're going to make sure that everything is set up proper and we're ready to go. Now that everything appears to be in order with our flow, let's move back to the demo file and sign in with our Claris ID. We can do so by moving up to the File menu and selecting Sign In to Claris ID. And this will need to be the same ID that you're logged into in your Claris Connect account. Once that is done, you can verify that you are logged in, as it now is message in file has changed to sign out of Claris ID, and we're ready to go into our script workspace. At this point, I have already created a script for us that we are looking at with the new Trigger Claris Connect flow step. Now, the big point about the update here is that you no longer have to make the URL inserted, but rather it automatically will display a window upon clicking on flow from your Claris ID with all of the different flows that are connected to your account through the various teams that you're a part of. I'm only a part of one team at the given time. However, we can see that the MailChimp demo flow that we already created in this video is there ready to use, and it does have the URL webhook that it will be using and automatically putting in for us. So we hit select, we see that the flow changes. And if we were to go into URL, you can still do it the other way, where you manually insert a URL rather than that handy pop-up box and insert it there. However, you'll notice that FileMaker has already put it in for us, depending on what we selected in that pop-up. Now, already done for you is a result variable where we will return the result, the target, from the Trigger Claris Connect flow script step. And we've already inserted this JSON data variable into our Claris Connect flow. Now we'll come back to that in just a minute, but we'll first want to go ahead and save, and we want to go in and test our button. We want to see if that example data will actually appear in our MailChimp account. So no need to insert data right now. We are just going to hit our sync with MailChimp button. And there we go. And we can go in and check if MailChimp is updated here with our new user information. And it is. There we have John Doe user at yourcompany.com is inserted and is now subscribed to our audience. Now, it's probably more helpful for us to actually put in our user information into our audience rather than just the test data. So we're going to go into Claris Connect and use what we call step data. And this is the data that is coming in from our incoming HTTP request that we'll be able to use in our subscribe to audience. So while I quickly refresh this page, we'll be able to go into subscribe to audience and edit some of this information. While I'll be keeping the audience the same, I will want to have the user information and other fields that we have filled in display over here. So I can go in and remove this and instead use script data that is received by our Claris Connect HTTP webhook. And as we can see, while we didn't pass anything through, we still did pass in the structure because we already had that JSON data file configured for you in our demo file. While no data did get passed through, let's go ahead and select and pair these fields in the correct configuration. So email is going to go here. We've got a first name field that we want to use. And again, we're just going down by the script step above it and determining which information we want to be placed into this field. So first name, we have a last name, and then we have a phone number. And those are the 4 pieces of information that we have chosen to pass through. You are more than welcome to go through and add any additional fields you'd like into the demo file that you would then be able to use step data in here and add those additional fields as you please. Now, once we've saved this, we are ready to go. The flow has now been updated to use the information we passed through the HTTP request and subscribe them to the audience. So now back to our user file here. We're going to look at this script. The script is, again, all set up with this JSON data file variable. And we have our F name, our L name, our email, and our phone variables that have been set by user information. And again, that's what we saw that we connected through the script data. So now that we've verified that JSON data is getting passed in, we are good to go back and actually make a new user. By clicking on the new user button, it creates a new record where we can create another name and user. So I'm just going to say test user. I'm going to give them a very basic phone number. And I'm just going to give a new email, one that I have not used before, company.com. And for organization, we'll put whatever organization this user is currently working for. And in this case, we're just going to use our company as DB Services. So we'll hit sync with MailChimp, and then we'll go back to our MailChimp to verify that this information has now been added through our flow. And there we have it. We have test user with their phone number and their email address has been added into our audience. For very easy convenience for us to now create new marketing campaigns throughout MailChimp. Now, what this does not do yet is actually allow us to update existing users. We are able to add new users, but we'd like to go just a bit more in depth onto the power that these Claris Connect flows have. So we'll be upgrading our flow to use a couple more steps, and this will all take place over in Claris Connect. So before we get to subscribing everybody to the audience and assuming that everybody is new, we are actually going to go and add a new action. And in this action, it will be using MailChimp. We're going to first search for audience members. And once we search for audience members, we will be able to, again, use the same MailChimp account that we had already set up through Subscribe to Audience and configure this to query the email that we have just passed through, our HTTP request. So we go to email, and we can even narrow it down to our specific audience, which I will do, and we will hit save. And now at this point, this will be searching for those members, but we need for something to happen based upon the information we receive with this. So we will select an if-then action that will be able to go through and check from the step data, no longer from the HTTP request, but actually from our search members to determine if we actually had any members or not. Now, scrolling through this step data, it can be rather long and confusing, but if we go down to the bottom, we're able to see total items. We're able to determine if exact matches total items, and then we'll use this to see if that actually has found any of our members already with that email address. So we're going to want to look for greater than and then insert not step data, but rather just a value of 0. And we'll save this. And now if we do find someone that already exists, we will go ahead and add a new action that will, instead of subscribing them to the audience, we'll be updating. So we selected the option of if it was true, go back into MailChimp, and we're going to select update audience member. And now update audience member using the same MailChimp account. We can select our audience. We can add in the email address just the same as if we were adding them as a new one. And we're going to use the HTTP incoming request to make sure that we're not going back to search members. We want to be using the same information that we passed through from our FileMaker app in this case. So we'll go back to email. We will set the status to subscribe. This is a requirement. It is required if the email address is new to the audience. However, we just want to make sure that everyone we're updating in our app is subscribed if for some reason they were to have unsubscribed at some point. Our first name, our last name, and our phone number will all get added now as well, using, again, the step data provided for us. Added too many there. It's easy to backspace script data just as if you were typing. Last name, and finally, phone number. Now that we've done that, we need to make sure that after audience member is completed, the updating, we don't want them to go and subscribe, so we need to add a stop to make this a true if-then scenario. So we will simply add a stop flow at the end and click save. And now our flow is complete. That if we encounter a new request, it will first search MailChimp to see if that member already exists in our audience. If it does, it will then update the audience member and stop from proceeding further. If it fails this and there is actually a new member request, it will simply skip over steps 4 and 5 and go straight to adding them into our audience. So one last time, let's figure this out. We have already tried to add a new audience member. Let's try editing a current existing member. As we just have this user information right here already pulled up, we're going to update the phone number, and we'll change that 0 from a 1 as a minute change. We'll sync with MailChimp and go back to MailChimp and see if that phone number did in fact change, in which we can see that our test user's phone number has now changed. No errors did occur. And if we wanted, we could go back in here and make a completely new test user, simply adding just another email address. We're going to reverse the name with just being user last, keeping the phone number as this is just test data for demonstration. And we can go back and see that it has created a new user for us. And there we have it. Now this information, I did overwrite the same record. You do have the ability to create new users, as many as you wish, and navigate back and forth between these arrows in order to get to your user information and use this as a great resource to utilize the new Trigger Claris Connect Flow script step with the Claris Connect flows and your third-party apps. We hope that this demonstrated a great way to connect your FileMaker application and your third-party apps together through the Trigger Claris Connect Flow new and updated script step. There are so many possibilities that just can't even be demonstrated in this video alone that'll be particular to your business case that you get to go out and explore by using Claris Connect. We do recommend that you use features such as debugging and API keys to help improve user security and user experience throughout your application. And if you have any more questions or want to hear about this in more detail, please feel free to read the article attached to this about our Trigger Claris Connect Flow script step and reach out to DB Services with any questions that you have.